If you are experiencing foundation issues, get a free estimate from Ox Foundations.
Our old friend Earl Lewis joins us this morning on Daybreak. And Coach, good morning to you, sir.
Good morning to you.
Good to have you with us. And looking back at a little Sylacauga history today, let's get going. I was looking through this book, and man, I had forgotten about some of these places.
Well, some of them you weren't around when
Now, that is true. That is true.
And I wasn't either. Yeah, it's been fun putting this together, though.
How did this come about?
Well, I've been collecting postcards for a number of years. In fact, a couple of ones that are pictured in this book I've had since I was in high school. Mm-hmm. One of the old municipal swimming pool, one of the original white midget, and maybe one or two others. But I got the idea to do this. My daughter gave me a book about 3 years ago for Christmas that had postcards from the entire state of Alabama. Mm-hmm. And there was one page or 2 pages in there with Sylacauga featured. And I thought, well, I've got all of these. And a young man who's a friend of mine, Ken Sims Jr., does the same thing. And we pooled our resources and put this book together. And it was fun doing it. It's got a lot of interesting things in it.
Now, is this book for sale? Or?
Yes, it is for sale. And it's on sale, for sale right now at Swin Communications, who printed this book for us, at Southern States Bank, at the Dixie Drug Store, at one other place that I'll think of in a minute, and I'm going to deliver some to South First Bank today. They're going to put them on display as well.
Sylacauga History in Vintage Postcards. Talk about some of the pictures that just kind of jump off the page at you.
Well, I thought we were going to be able to feature some of these on the screen, but I guess that didn't quite make it. But we've got some really good pictures of downtown Sylacauga beginning in the early 1900s and running up to the busy times of Broadway in the 1940s and 50s. And those are some that are very interesting to a lot of people. You can still see a few landmarks, the old Rex Hotel.
Talk about the Rex Hotel a little bit. I've heard that, but I'm not familiar with it.
Well, it's on Broadway, just at the corner of 2nd Street and Broadway on the, that would be the east side of Broadway. Mm-hmm. And it was a hotel. In fact, we had 2 hotels on Broadway at the same time, the Rex and the Saxon Night Hotel. Night Hotel, most of us called it, but they're both there. And the Rex Hotel building is still there. Alan Sanders owns that building, mm-hmm. and he's done several things developing. But if you go inside, the stairwell and the rooms are still intact, and he has visions, I think, of restoring it one of these days. But it's there on Broadway, right above where Frank House Jeweler used to be, in that area right there, and it's there. The Saxon Night Hotel, again, most of us just called it the Night Hotel, was almost directly across Broadway from where we sit, where the Board of Education mm-hmm. is housed now, on that lot.
Kind of, if you can, paint us a visual picture of some of the images back in that era.
Well, Broadway was a busy place for one thing. Excuse me, Jimmy. Very busy place during that time. All the downtown, the 2 or 3 blocks of downtown Sylacauga had a lot of thriving retail businesses. The movie theater, the Martin Theater, was approximately where King's Pawn Shop is now. Mm-hmm. We've already talked about the 2 hotels. Some of the businesses downtown were the Patty's Drug Store, Higgins Drug Store. We had 3 10-cent stores on the same block between 2nd and 3rd on the west side of Broadway. Woolworth, which you mentioned in one of the mm-hmm. obituaries a few minutes ago, and V.J. Elmore and Max, and they were all almost next door to each other, with Higgins Drug Store in between 2 of them. So it was a busy place. And back in the way before this, but in the 50s, when I remember, Avondale paid off every 2 weeks, and on the weekend that Avondale paid off, you couldn't walk on Broadway. There were so many people down there, and it was just a great time to be in Sylacauga, a great time for Sylacauga, because retail businesses here were thriving during that period of time. The old Sylacauga cash store, Goldberg Brothers. I don't have pictures of all of them. Some of them are featured in these downtown pictures, but that's just a few. And of course, the City National Bank and the First National Bank were all on Broadway at the corner of 3rd Street and Broadway.
My mama, you mentioned that cash store.
Yeah.
Jackie Shockley was my aunt. And Lee Beasley, he worked in there for a while, and Richard Blades, and I can still, had that upstairs to it, right. And I can still hear those floors creaking. Yeah,
all of those stores, the Leader, which was owned by the Goldberg family and Goldberg Brothers, and the cash store, all owned by the Goldberg family, and all of them had the same floors. They'd creak when you walked through there.
Get those Tough Nut blue jeans.
And they started selling Levi's at some point too.
Yeah. And so this book is available. What is the cost of the book?
It's $15. Okay. It has 56 photographs in it, 23 pages, and they're all, at least to anybody that has the least bit of interest in Sylacauga history, they're interested. And it brings back memories to those of us who are old enough to remember a lot of this. And it tells the younger set how Sylacauga used to look. And it's already selling very well. We had 100 printed to begin with, and we can reprint it just at a moment's notice if we need to. And I don't really know exactly how many we've sold, but we're doing well. We've
just in time for Christmas. What a gift. Yeah.
We timed it that way on purpose a little bit. Actually, we meant to get it out a little bit earlier than that, but I got real busy one weekend just a little over 3 weeks ago and did all the layout for it and carried it to Gary Greer at Swin, and he had it out. I carried it to him on Monday. He had it ready to go Thursday, and that's been less than 3 weeks ago.
Wow.
So perfect timing.
Be a wonderful stocking stuffer.
Oh yeah, and we've had several people buy them already when they found out about them to send to relatives or friends that live in other places that haven't been around Sylacauga in a while but grew up here and are familiar with how it looked.
One thing, a couple of things that one in my remembrance and very vaguely was the train trestle down there, the where the trains came through. You got pictures of that too, right?
Yeah, there's one of the what they called Union Station, which was the passenger station. It was right where Bluebell Park and that area is now, and then just south of there where the municipal building is in that general area, there was another that was, I believe, L&N, and it was all freight, and it was just a little bit north of where the municipal building is now, about where 4th Street comes into Broadway there.
But they had those passenger trains and right there, gosh, I got it pictured in my mind right there at Broadway, somewhere right in there.
Broadway, where the side end of Bluebell Park, where it fronts onto Broadway, that's where the station, the one that the picture is in the book, that's where it's at. And and one thing, Jimmy, people probably be kind of shocked to hear this that haven't been around long enough. When the passenger trains or freight trains came across Broadway right there at the station, just south of Turner Motors. That's where it was. And if you got caught walking to or from school, which I did to Sylacauga High School a lot, if a train came by and you got caught right there, you'd get showered with cinders, because those locomotives were still coal powered at that time, and you'd have to run for cover, or you'd wind up with cinders all in your hair. So
what about the old hospital?
We've got the hospital pictured here, and we've pictured it in some other historical things that we've done, but it was the only public hospital built in the United States during World War II.
Oh my goodness.
And it's still, of course, the same building that we have now, except it's been added onto and remodeled and built around. But yes, they built military hospitals in the States during World War II, but that's the only public hospital built. How we swung that, I don't know. I've never been able to find out exactly, but evidently we had some good politicians somewhere that got that done for us.
The older we get, the more we cling to historical part of our life, and remembering back when. You know, I can't hardly remember yesterday, but I like to remember back when, and the old coffee pot cafe. Some of those.
We've got it pictured in the book as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that particular area, you know, you had the Night Hotel on the corner of First Street and Broadway. Next to it, you had the coffee pot, well, the Martin Theater, and then the Coffee Pot Cafe, the Trailways bus station, and a taxi stand, all in the same facility there.
Now, Mr. Hogan, he was, I remember his voice.
He and his wife, Jerry and Ken Hogan's parents, and yeah, they ran the bus station for a long time. And I used to, when I was coaching at Sylacauga for many years, we sent our game film on Friday night to Birmingham by Trailways bus. As soon as the game was over, one of us would run up to the bus station and put it on the bus about 9:30, 10 o'clock, somewhere along in there, and we'd have it back the next morning at 8 o'clock on a Trailways bus. And so the Hogans handled that for us, and both their sons played football for us during that era too.
Yeah. Now, a lot of good eateries back in that day too.
Oh yeah, the Old Hickory in particular, it's pictured in the book, and it's the one that everybody remembers. In fact, people from all over the country remember the Old Hickory, because we were on what was called the Florida Short Route at that time, and a lot of the snowbirds came through here, headed to Florida, and then came back through, headed back north at the end of the winter. And it is pictured there. Mr. Leon Bice was the owner of the Old Hickory, and I can still remember how if you went to the Old Hickory and then you went to church or to a meeting or wherever, everybody would say, "You've been to the Old Hickory," because that smell was there.
Yeah.
You could smell it in your clothes for hours or till they were washed, actually, after you've been to the Old Hickory.
Well, some good eating there, though, I'll tell you that.
Oh, that lemon pie and those barbecue
Wow.
sandwiches. Yeah.
You know, Dixie Drug Company, that building's been down there at Broadway and 8th Street, seemed like forever. But there's a lot of history to that, too, and it's in this book.
It's in the book, and Dr. Red McDermott and his wife, Miss Ruby, moved. They had a restaurant on Broadway, again, about where the municipal building is now. And in 1945, right before, actually a couple, 3 years before I moved to Sylacauga, they moved down there. And they had the Piping Hot restaurant and hotel.
Piping
Hot, and that was their Ms. McDermott's brother, Claude Newman, ran it for a while. He was in the restaurant business several places, at the Forks and the White Midget, and he was down there with them for a time also. That family has been pillars of the community for a long time, and of course Ray McDermott owns it and runs it now, the son of the two that I just mentioned, and it's a very interesting place because Ray's got jillions of his historic photographs in there, some of them old newspapers, and by the way, he's all decorated up for Christmas right now. I think he won second place in the contest.
He sure did. You know, a lot of people watching this morning are familiar with, even though it's a statewide broadcast, a lot of people in the local area remember Avondale Mills. Almost everybody had some ties with Avondale Mills years ago.
Well, yeah, if you didn't work there, or some of your relatives didn't, you wore blue jeans that were made, or where the cloth was made there. So, yeah, an institution that's long gone now, and what a shame it is. But as everybody knows, the cotton mill industry, just because of the offshore manufacturing, just lost its clout, and we lost Avondale Mills. And of course, then they had the tragic fire after the mill closed, and we've got a couple of pictures, one of the weave room and one of Eva Jane Mill in the book as well. And of course, cotton and was an industry as far as actually farming in this area too. And we've got a picture or two in here of the old Parker fertilizer plant and some of the people that worked there and owned the place. And so Avondale had a big impact. The quarry, of course, is our oldest and most stable industry that we've ever had in this area. It's still going strong, thank goodness.
So how can people get copies of this book?
Well, if they want to run into me, I've got some in my vehicle, but like I said a while ago, Southern States Bank has them for sale. Swin Communications has them. The Dixie Drug has them. and I'm going to put them in South First Bank today. And I see you thumbing through there. We've got pictures of a lot of old homes, of the schools, the way they looked. Several interesting ones of old Sylacauga High School and Main Avenue and B.B. Comer as well. And
churches galore. We have some beautiful churches, don't we?
We sure do. And I think one time I counted after I went to work at the care house and was getting a lot of churches to help us there. I think there's over 100 churches within about a 10 or 12 mile radius in and around Sylacauga.
I mean, I was just looking at some of the dates these churches were founded and built and that kind of stuff. And of course, the one of the real backbone of Sylacauga is the quarries, and you got plenty of pictures on those too.
Right, sure have. And like I said earlier, it's the one real stable industry that we have that's been here since the 1800s and still going strong. And that's one of the things that keeps us afloat here right now. Also, though, motels. We had 3 thriving motels on Fort Williams during the 50s and 60s. The Sylacauga motel that was owned by John Milton Hightower, and the Fort Williams motel that was owned by a group of men. And I don't know who all of them were, but Murray McCluskey, Bill Whetstone, and Bill Nichols were all involved in it. And then the Jackson Trace, which is still there, but completely different makeup than it was. It had a nice restaurant with it. The Townhouse restaurant was with it, and
old schools too. My goodness, Main Avenue, and they got the old City Hall building and the old wreck too.
Yeah,
you remember we used to play basketball out there at that old wreck?
That concrete court.
And them chain nets.
Right. We got, I worked for the recreation department off and on the first part of my life in high school as a lifeguard, and then the athletic director, the first one we had for the rec department, and the nets kept getting worn out real fast, so we went to those chain nets.
They didn't wear
out. The balls got worn out then from going through those chain nets.
If you grabbed a net just right, your hands wore out too.
Yeah, if you get home there and couldn't get down. Yeah.
Earl, what an honor it is to have you with us this morning, talking about Sylacauga history in vintage postcards compiled from the collections of Ken Sims Jr., Birmingham, and Coach Earl Lewis, of course, here in Sylacauga. And it's just chock full of great photographs, and you can get yours and contact Earl for more information on this. What a great Christmas stocking stuffer it would be. Earl, if I ask you, give me 2 of your favorites out of this book.
Well, probably the one of Broadway that's in the late 1940s, because that's how it still looked in the 50s when I actually remember it well. And then the other one, probably the front of the old Sylacauga High School, the way it looked the first day I went in there as a student, and it was a beautiful old building. And I've got one story. I guess it's all right for me to tell this. In those days, when I went there, and all of us in my generation, the 7th grade went there. So it was 7 through 12. And during the summer, before I was going to be in the 7th grade, I went to the municipal swimming pool every day, sometimes as many as 2 or 3 times a day, and wound up working there later, as I just said. But before that summer, before I went there, several of the boys that were going to be seniors that fall, Joe Caldwell for one, Dan Harris, James Emery Bennett, there were about 8 or 10 of them that came to the pool every day, and they told me all summer long, they picked at me, and I hope that's because they liked me, not because they disliked me, but they picked at me and dunked me through it in the pool, and they told me all summer that the first day of school, when I came down there, that they were going to take my pants off and run them up the flagpole. And it scared me because I thought and they probably would have done it, but I went in the back door of the school, and this is the honest truth, the whole first semester, I never went near the front door of the school because the seniors were all around the front door. I went around on that back side and went in because
you had that in your mind, didn't you?
I knew they'd probably do it knowing that crowd.
Coach, thanks for being with us this morning. Get your copy of Sylacauga History and Vintage Postcards. For more information, contact Coach Earl Lewis.
One quick thing.
Sure.
Proceeds go to the Sylacauga Historical Society. They're not going in mine or Ken's pocket. The Historical Society is benefiting from the sale of this book.
Fantastic. Merry Christmas, Coach.
Thank you. Merry Christmas to you.